It's Boomer Sooner time here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate y'all stopping by. Lock it in for the next 60 minutes here on our Oklahoma channel. We go Sooners live each and every Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. where it counts. Got Jason Watkins here to help us break down everything Oklahoma. Catch Jason on College Football Hall of Fame podcast. That's the place to be. And we will get more details on what Jason's up to for the next hour. Jason, what's going on today?
Oh, a lot of stuff. We've been talking nothing but recruiting lately, and then and then you've got the new Big 12 members that are coming in, and media days coming up next week. So busy.
We've had some really good shows with Jason in the last few weeks, so check those out. A lot of recruiting talk and SEC talk as Oklahoma, of course, received its 2024 schedule 2 or 3 weeks ago. So check out those episodes if you have yet to do so. We're going to give you a quarterback breakdown, and then for the next 10 or 12 weeks, as we head toward August camp and go through August camp, we're going to provide a position breakdown each and every week. So be looking forward to that. And of course, leave those comments and questions there in the chat. Please consider the super chat as well to help us continue to grow the channel. All right, Jason, before we look at Dylan Gabriel and the rest of that quarterback room, of course, from a recruiting standpoint, nothing tangible happened this week. No commits came in, but there's always talk out there and there's always hope. And there's a couple 5-stars I know on the horizon that are seriously considering Oklahoma, and Sooner fans should feel optimistic about.
Absolutely. I think that and we've been talking to them a lot about this lately, but not commitments yet. No, Sooner Cowboys, you're right. They haven't come in just yet. I think that Williams Waneri, the defensive lineman from Kansas City area, he's probably, that seems to be what everybody, the next guy that probably should fall that way, which that will be a big one. He is the number one defensive lineman in the country ranking wise, and then I feel like really that's been the push all weekend. You've seen even tweets coming from the guys that are already on the team. He went, and from what we understand, that he was on a visit this past week at Georgia. It didn't last very long, and he did not leave there with anybody thinking that he was going. Nobody put in any kind of crystal ball or anything like that for him to go to Georgia. He also had, I believe he had also went to Missouri as well. Of course, that being the kind of the home state team that they were really recruiting him hard in the SEC. It almost feels like he kind of felt the obligation to go on that one, but I think he made it. It sounds like, from what I'm hearing, he made it pretty clear. But the NIL money seems to be there for these guys. We're talking about him, David Stone, Nigel Smith, guys like that. I think that they're big targets. McKinley from Louisiana, who's apparently very much still in play for Oklahoma and Texas, I would think. But David McKinley, and there's another top 15, top 20 guy in the rankings as well. So it looks like, as soon as, none of these guys have really committed yet. This is the long game that you have to play when you're playing at this level. I know that it's kind of tough, and Sooner Cowboys, he's always on my stream and stuff, and it just scares him to death. He's just, I think half the time he's kind of trolling at me and stuff like that, but he's worried about it, and I think that's, to some extent, that's the concern for a lot of Oklahoma fans, and including myself. You know that the biggest problem has always been, for the longest time, is defense, and when you're heading into the SEC, you need to get a lot of folks in, a lot of guys there that can fill in those holes. You need depth. It's not enough to get one guy. You need 2 or 3. I think that's why they did what they did in the transfer portal as well. And that's something that we talked about this last night on my show, was that really you have to look at it in terms of, look, they brought in guys like Rondell Bothroyd and, which I thought that was a huge deal. And I know he's going to play some. He's kind of a hybrid guy. Going to play some end and things like that as well. But then you go in and let's see, just looking at some of these guys. I mean, Grayson Halton, he came in at 260 pounds. This guy is now at 290. There was a picture of him on Twitter the other day. He's ripped up and ready to go. He looks ready. This is a guy that everybody's excited about. Jacob Lacey doesn't look like he's probably going to play this year, but I believe that Devon Sears, that was a big pickup as well in the portal. And some of these guys, I think that's where you have to kind of look at it, and they're in these battles and getting some of these wins, but bringing in some of these guys that are going to allow them to take that step forward and win. That's the main thing for Oklahoma fans. It's just go in there and win. And I think that in this last year in the Big 12, and with the schedule that's pretty manageable, I don't think that there's a lot of people that are going to have a ton of patience. And I get that. I think we need to encourage more patience, but I also understand that, when you are used to seeing this football team do things that you are, as far as getting deep into, winning conference championships and getting into the playoff and stuff like that, that's, the standard is the standard, and they understand that. And I think that Coach Venables understands that, but it's just, I do feel like this is, they're heading in that direction. You've got, and again, like guys like R. Mason Thomas, they're expecting a lot out of him. Marcus Stripley, we're going to see how a lot of these guys end up working out. But when you got a guy like Deshaun McCullough, defensive end, that's coming in, and I mean, he looks every bit the part of, freshman All-American type of guy. That's what he was at Indiana. You've got PJ Adebawari on the other side that, I think that when he gets in, he's going to make a big impact as well. That, Trace Ford coming over from Oklahoma State, he didn't come over to lose. I think that he kind of saw what he wanted to see coming into that. There's no way he leaves Oklahoma State if he doesn't think he has an opportunity to win, I think, and be a part of a big, a great defense. And if you were, we were talking a little bit, I don't know if we talked about that on this show last week or not, but on Unfair Sports, you had Reggie Pearson on there, and he was talking about that he believes that this defense already is a top 10, top 5 defense. Of course, he played on that Wisconsin defense a few years back where they were number 2 in the country, and he said that this is every bit as talented or more talented from top to bottom on this defense. But obviously when they were what they were last year, we got to see that, before we're going to believe it. You know what I mean? And I get that. But listen, I know that I watched that guy put hits on Oklahoma in that Texas Tech game that, he hit Eric Gray, something fierce. And then he lit up Dylan Gabriel too. So, it's he likes to, he's one of the big hitter guys for, those safeties that's going to come in and do that kind of stuff. But anyway.
Folks, we're only 2 weeks away from Big 12 Media Days. Jason's going to be there, and we are going to rev it up here in regards to focusing mostly on the 2023 season. Of course, if there's recruiting news, both news and speculation, we're going to talk about that. Have to. It's the lifeblood of the program, and Brent Venables and company have a lot of work to do to get the numbers where you guys want them to be. But let's understand the point that you initially made about the 2 5-star defensive linemen that are in play, Nawari and Stone.
Mm-hmm.
Think about this. Defensive linemen for the last 10 years or so have gone to Georgia, Alabama, LSU, Ohio State, Clemson. Yes. Oklahoma just hasn't had that dude. Tony Casillas a million years ago, Gerald McCoy, there have been a few guys.
Yeah.
Tommy Harris, yes. But we're talking about at those other schools, waves of guys, just waves of guys. For them to be in play for 2, I'm guessing if they get 1, people should be reasonably happy with that. If they get both of those guys, you're talking about just something that Oklahoma has not done in years and years and years, going into a league where being physical at the point of attack is so much more important.
Absolutely. No, and I still think I've said a bunch of times on on my show, and I think I've said it here. I think Nigel Smith's liable to be a 5-star, and I know a lot of people think he might be going to go to Ohio State. I hear that he's coming to Oklahoma. I mean, that's just what I keep hearing, and he might be as good as any of them. Athletically speaking, he's explosive. I mean, watching him play basketball, he does things that it's like, wow, he's that kind of athlete. And then Dominic McKinley, I mean, that guy is unbelievable too, and you would think that he's guaranteed to go to, say, LSU, but yeah, just what Hank is saying on here, that's the foundation of a championship defense right there, is that point of attack, as you said, and getting pressure on quarterbacks and stuffing up that middle. It does so much to free up everybody else if you've got those guys taken care of on the front line. And when you start thinking about, you got DeSamico on one side, you got PJ on the other, and you've got, Ethan Downs, some of these guys that are already there. At Trace Ford, Trace Ford's been, if he can be healthy, that guy's a machine. Whenever he's healthy, he's a problem. So I believe that, yeah, if you get one of them, it's the foundation of a great defense. If you get a couple and 3 of these guys that are on this level of what they are, then yeah, I mean, you expect that with the way they're doing things in the strength and conditioning program and the things that they're doing with this defense, I would expect them to do big things. And so, yeah, it's important to get them. I think that the main one everybody wants to see him get is obviously David Stone. He's from the area, playing at IMG. He plays a few games on Twitter and keeps you guessing. But I keep coming back to, I think when it comes to a guy like him, I think well, first and foremost, he seems to be recruiting the other ones, and they are very tight. They all seem to hang out together and talk to each other a lot and things like that. And I've heard a lot of things about, like, even when they're at the building and stuff, and they've been around each other, like at the barbecue and stuff, they sit around and talk together all the time. They're hanging out together. They're doing different stuff. They're talking about ball, which is a big deal, right? And then when you get a guy like David Stone that's really pushing for it, and he grew up loving Oklahoma, and Gerald McCoy has been in his ear a lot, apparently, and he tweets at him all the time, but apparently they've talked a lot. So, that's kind of, to me, I almost feel like he's going to feel an obligation there. I think that, he's definitely enjoying his recruiting time, getting to try and check out all these different places. And, it's got to be a pretty cool thing for a kid, for, them to treat you like a superstar before you've ever even stepped on campus, driving Lamborghinis and doing stuff. You know what I mean? It's kind of cool. And they can do things on a different level than we're ever been used to with this NIL stuff, right? But I do think, and obviously, yeah, your guys are right about that part. The money is there. But what we're hearing about Williams-Nwaneri, it sounds like what Georgia was saying was that they don't have that kind of money to offer him, that they know that is what is being offered there at OU. So I think that may very well be why it wasn't very long. It was an unofficial visit. I think that they were trying to figure out where it was at and whether they were going to be able to be in on him or not. And I don't think that from everything that I keep hearing from different places, is that it didn't go very well as far, if you're Georgia, that, and you look at a guy like Steve Wilfong, he's had him at 100% for Oklahoma for months, and he didn't change it after he went to Georgia. So used to, as you said, it's kind of scary to even think about him going to Georgia and taking a look. It's like, oh crap, we lost him. You know what I mean? So hey, this is even being in these conversations and this deep into the game is different for Oklahoma right now. They haven't been in it this long. Usually they wouldn't be on the list anymore. So, but
folks, we're breaking down positions here at the Voice of College Football with Jason here starting this week. We'll go through quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, offensive line, defensive line, corners, safeties, linebackers, of course, special teams. We're going to do it all, get you set for fall camp on into the season. We'll start with quarterbacks this week and continue to leave those comments and questions there in the chat. You get highlighted, of course, with the super chat. We'll put you at the front of the line. and we appreciate the support. Catch Jason's work. College Football Hall of Fame podcast is the place to be. When's your next show, Jason?
We're probably going to have something here on, today's Wednesday. We're building on this studio and stuff, but we're probably going to do a live tomorrow night or Friday. So I haven't decided just yet, but we're going to start going 5 days a week here in the next couple of weeks. So it's going to be a lot of it. But we're trying to get this studio finished up, and then, I'll be heading to Dallas for Big 12 Media Days.
Nice. I really don't know how many spoof accounts I've seen through the years. I've seen Sleepy Mark, Angry Mark, a few other ones, and now this is a different one. But we'll go to the comment made here about Dillon Gabriel. We'll start our quarterback breakdown with, of course, DG. And I have heard something about Dillon Gabriel and Central Florida interest in going back to where he got his career started. Yeah. I don't know if there's any substance to that.
Oh, it's been fun this week. It's been fun the last couple of weeks. It started with there's a content creator out there that was on the Locked On show with Cody Stovall, the Locked On Oklahoma State show.
Yep.
And he asked him who they were looking forward to most playing in their first season in the league. And he immediately said Oklahoma, because they want to get a shot on Dillon Gabriel for leaving the program, and that there were rumors about stuff that he had started up in the locker room and blah, 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 blah. And since then, of course, it's come out that, they say a lot of stuff. I mean, there's a lot of Dillon Gabriel bashing going on there, that he's the one that forced Mackenzie Milton out, and that, and Mackenzie, from what I know, him and Mackenzie Milton are best friends. So, I don't know what that's all about. But they've also, it's just weird. They've actually, you saw Gus Malzahn come out this past week on Wednesday and was talking about how there's the big three in Florida and there needs to be a big four, that they're as good or better than any of those teams in the state, which is ridiculous. I realize that FSU and Florida and Miami and when have you ever seen Florida fans, Miami fans, Florida State fans like taking up for each other? Never. Right? They are, when it comes to that stuff, that big three stuff, they took that very seriously. They didn't like it at all. And they said that I saw one content creator from each school, and every one of them were like taking up for the other schools. And it was pretty crazy to me. But that on top of it, they just seem to be really boastful, these folks from UCF. And I don't understand it, because I get it, but when you start talking about Coley Matrix national champions, that's not where you want to hang out. You know what I mean? First off, you had the year that, what was it? I think it was 12 or 13 when, because Bama blew up Notre Dame in that BCS, the last BCS game, whatever one it was. I think it was Bama blowing.
Yeah, second to last one.
Yeah,
2012. Yeah.
Okay, 2012. So, yeah, and then they still named the Coley Matrix names Notre Dame national champs. They lost 42-14, And then in 2016, Clemson beats up on Alabama. Same thing. They name Alabama the national champs. And then it's the very next year is when they named UCF. And they had like the 83rd strength of schedule in the country that year. I don't care if you went undefeated. Who cares? You're beating Temple and come on, man, Army and stuff. And then last year they didn't. I mean, they're coming into the league, and I think that's great. But to me, it seemed weird that they would come out and attack, kind of be on Dillon like that and saying the things that they're saying about him. But they continue. They just make it louder every time you say something about it. They get worse about it. So it's been kind of funny. I'm wondering. I can't wait to hear what Dillon is going to have to say about it. I'm hoping that gets asked very early on there at Big 12 Media Days. I'm sure he'll be there. So,
yeah, when the four got announced, BYU, Houston, Cincinnati, and UCF to the Big 12, I thought immediately, this is fun. In addition to knowing that this is a great move by the Big 12, they have just secured their league. It's a tenuous, shaky, unstable state here with 8 schools. And if one more leaves, then it may fall apart. So they stabilized their league. They made the best possible moves. I produced a video and posted it not long after Texas and Oklahoma announced that they should add, and I listed those 4 schools. So, in my estimation, they made the best possible move. But I'm still trying to figure out who's going to have the best impact and the most favorable outlook going forward. But I think UCF certainly has an argument based on
Sure.
their
Well,
location, what their recruiting can be.
Except
Huge
it
alumni
hasn't been as
base,
long,
Orlando. Yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah.
they've competed.
Listen, they have.
To your point, the schedule says that they have not competed at an elite or anywhere close to an elite level in the past, but in certain games
They have.
they have.
I agree.
And,
I
and
agree. And I think that's the adjustment that they got to make, right, Mark?
Yeah.
Is doing it week to week, being in a bigger conference, a power conference. And particularly this year, you still do have Oklahoma and Texas. But I would say that, when you start looking at, we've been talking a lot about Texas Tech lately. And I mean, they're bringing in guys that you don't usually see going to Lubbock. But then you look at even places like Kansas. I mean, they're picking up some good players. They picked up a 4-star defensive end the other day. That's surprising. You know what I mean? That he would end up at Kansas. So I still feel like, as we kind of talked about, I would say that Kansas State is definitely going to be one of the favorites to win the conference again. Until Texas actually does it, you can't. I mean, I get it why they're favored. They've got the best roster. They should be favored. Whether or not they'll do it, it's another thing, and I mean, they haven't done it in so long that you can't. I mean, it's what, 2009 is their last conference championship. That's a long time ago. So when you look at it in that vein, there's a, and you've said this a bunch, and I think you're absolutely right about it, is the Big 12 may be the most competitive league in the country when it comes top to bottom, that each one of these teams can beat each other, so I think that all of the teams coming in, and I think that they're all coming in. I think UCF is probably up there as far as the 4 right now, where they stand right now this second, because I feel like Cincinnati with getting a new coach, I'm not even sure that he's the best one for the job, but I mean, he's there. He's had some success, but when you lose Luke Fickell and what they've been, I mean, they were in the playoff a couple of years ago. So you're looking at it, well, that's tough for them. BYU, as you kind of were talking about, they what, 8-5, 8-4, 8-5 usually, and they've had a couple of good seasons here and there. I think that they have an opportunity to. I think this is going to help their recruiting some as well. I think it already kind of has given it a bump, and I think that UCF is probably getting a bump as well, because again, when you're in Florida, and they actually just got a guy from that left in the portal from Oklahoma, so. And he was one of the guys, that defensive line guys, that you were expecting good things from. And so it's just one of those things. I feel like that's they've got an opportunity to do so, but you would think that they would come in a little quieter, than I don't know. I've always heard that, I've always felt like it's better not to give a bunch of bulletin board material. That's part of what makes college football cool, is all the trash talking. But when hey, listen, winning some bowl games here and there and a couple of wins against a good program, it's different than having to do it week after week. So when you're going to come into a league like that, you probably would have been better off being quiet and just surprising Oklahoma than coming in doing a bunch of this. And you're coming to Norman. It's going to be a tough ask, to do and you're doing that to your team as fans, that's a little weird, but even Gus did it, I mean, I was surprised that he did with the stuff that he was saying, because you wouldn't have, I mean, I get it. It's coach speak, but I thought it was a little odd.
Here's my take on UCF 2017. Yeah. My take is that they're not even close to the best team in the country. They're probably they were really good. They were the probably 10th or 12th best team in the country. The big calling card they had, and I found this amusing and still do to this day, is that Auburn beat number 1 Georgia. Auburn beat a couple weeks later number 1 Alabama.
That's right.
Well, Auburn lands in the Peach Bowl against UCF, and they actually play that game in the same stadium that Georgia and Alabama played the national championship, and that they played the SEC championship, where Auburn lost a rematch to Georgia.
That's right. Yep.
And UCF, of course, pulls off the
forgot
upset
that it
and
was
they
the same
defeat
stadium.
Auburn. Now, if we want to go ultimate transitive property, then you can lay that out. I don't believe in that. I believe in resumes, which is a bunch of transitive properties put together. If you do it like 8 times, 9 times, then that's a resume. But to do it, one time and then play this transitive property, shoot, I had somebody arguing the transitive property with me a couple weeks ago, and I took Ohio State in 2021. And you know who I had Ohio State losing to? A team that was a top 5 team in the country, Northern Arizona. And I was saying I can get almost any team in the country to lose to any other team in the country. So the transitive property obviously is garbage. So no, UCF was not the best team in the country. They were not the 5th best team in the country. To your point, they beat up on Temple and Navy and their conference schedule, which to their credit is the best group of 5 schedule, best group of 5 conference. It is no longer after losing all those teams, but it's still a group of 5 schedule. It's just like Cincinnati made the playoff with the 90-something schedule as well.
Right.
But I will say this for UCF. I have no issue with them hanging a banner and saying we are the national champions. They can do whatever they want. I have no issue with them doing that because college football is so utterly screwed up. They did all that they can do. That's all they can do is go out and win every game. And then they line up against the top 10 team in the country that beat Georgia and Alabama, and they beat them. So that's all they could do. So I have no issue with them hanging a banner. I would hang a banner too, because I would say we did everything we could. We won all our games. We're the only team in America
they're in a different place than the Big 3 is too, right? I mean, they're in a different place than that. And they're in a different place than Oklahoma is. Oklahoma has not claimed 11 national championships, right? Florida State, I think they got like 5 that they have. You've got Florida a couple, and then there's 4 or 5 for Miami too.
Well, Florida definitely has 3. Spurrier won 1, Meyer won 2, and those were all
right. No, I'm talking about ones that they didn't claim. The years that they were named national champion by some obscure poll or something like that, similar to like.
Oh, sure, there's a lot of those out there. Yeah,
there's 21 between the Big 3 and Oklahoma that they haven't claimed, and I get it. UCF isn't that, but that's why you probably shouldn't say a bunch of stuff like that about being as good as these other teams when you're. They're not claiming and hanging banners for those.
Well, especially when you're not the coach that won that game and
lost the damn game.
That was 6 years ago at this point.
He was the coach of Auburn and got beat.
Exactly. That's what makes it even funnier.
I know it.
Come into the league and prove something, then start talking. But hey, it makes for interesting discussion.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have a discussion on the quarterback situation, so I'll lay it out this way, Jason. Of course, this has been, I will say there's an argument at places like Ohio State, but this has been the best quarterback room in the country, in my eyes, number 1.
Yeah.
Since, later in Bob Stoops' tenure, we can roll through the names. Heisman winners, Heisman candidates. Haven't missed a beat. Boom, 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 boom. So to put Dylan Gabriel up against Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield and Jalen Hurts, difficult to do. Sam Bradford going back years before that. Tough to do. He still threw 25 touchdowns and 6 picks. He does have a reputation for being a little scattershot at times.
He does.
Airmailing a few to the sideline, at times being a bit sporadic. But he comes in from UCF to further this point. where he's looking at 3 legitimate defenses a year, and the rest of the games he's able to carve up Navy and Tulane. I'm not talking about the Tulane team that last year won 12 games, but a
They were
typical
really
Tulane
good last
team
year, weren't they?
that's winning 6 or 7 games, that has the 100th best defense in the country. And now suddenly, even though the Big 12 is not known for defense, I would challenge anyone to just look at scores. Just look at scores. You could do this 10 years ago, and you could easily pick out the Big 12 and say, if you just looked at scores and took all the names off the scores, you'd say, well, these are all the Big 12 games, 42-38, 45-42. You could do that. You can't do that anymore.
No.
Look at the last several championship games in the Big 12. They've been played in the teens and 20s.
It's weird, isn't it? They're actually playing defense now. It's changed.
They are playing defense.
The narrative hasn't changed a lot. You still have a lot of casuals out there that'll tell you that it's, oh, they don't play no defense in the Big 12. I beg to differ. There's a lot of teams that do. You're right. Yeah.
It's much better defense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say it's elite, but in a few places it's close to it. Certainly Kansas State shows up, and Texas has the talent on that side of the ball. And Iowa
State's been a top 10 defense for about 5 years.
Yeah. They're a great
unbelievable. They're definitely
point on your part. Yeah. Don't look at the record. They produced a really good defense last year, in particular, with a bad team, but before that, of course, with a lot of guys that moved on to the NFL. So, Dillon Gabriel, your thoughts about where he ranks as a Big 12 or national quarterback?
Big 12, I would say he's probably top 3. Wouldn't necessarily put him at 3, but I think that he's top 3. If I'm ranking the Big 12 quarterbacks, it starts with Jalen Daniels. I think he's the most electric quarterback in the conference right now. I like Quinn Ewers a lot too as well, but I think you want to talk about erratic. He's had his moments as well, and I would tell you that I think a lot of that has to do with the game planning and stuff, the way that they don't seem to get. I mean, when you've got, one of the things that I was really surprised to see on this show last week when we were talking about Reggie Pearson is he was saying that he thinks that Roshan was better than Bijan, so that was pretty wild thing to hear. But he said balance wise and things like that, and that he was just that good. He was just really that good. Of course, Bijan Robinson was amazing too. So I mean, it's it wasn't by much, I don't think, but I got to tell you, it's when you had both of those guys and they were throwing the ball 40 and 50 times a game, sometimes it's like, why? It just didn't make a lot of sense. But I do think that Quinn has an NFL caliber arm. And I think that he's got an opportunity to kind of show himself out this year a little bit, but I think you want to kind of see it from him. When it comes to Dillon, I think that you're right. I think there's some times that to me, it's more maddening when you see him hold onto the football a little long, taking a coverage sack on a 3rd and long, or even, sometimes you've seen him do it when they're going for it on 4th, and it'll drive you crazy. But when he's on. And I think that there was times last year that particularly once he got that concussion and they realized they just really didn't have anything behind him, that with him being a little smaller, this is the type of guy that I've always been of the opinion that you need those small guys. I remember when Baker was at Oklahoma, he was at his best on the move. Get him out of the pocket, let him, wait till the opening comes open, and then he's going to hit it, and just let him play ball, because he's just, kind of an ad lib guy, and he's still kind of the same way in the NFL. I think that the best coaches kind of put guys, and Hank's probably right. I don't think he was the same after the concussion either. Until the end of the season, he looked really good. But I think they also changed that playbook up a lot because of that. Again, I think that he's better if you let him kind of, get off his schedule and go. Once the pocket starts breaking down, he doesn't need to be in it because he's small, so he's not going to be able to throw it even over his own lineman. And I mean, you kind of think about guys like Tua whenever he was there. He's kind of the same. Lefty, small, Hawaiian, the whole thing. So really, it's just, and Tua, and I think that when they have a lane to throw in, they're good. You know what I mean? He's got a big arm. It's just not And yeah, he's missed some open passes even and stuff like that. And I think that a lot of that, you think about that Kansas State game. He had a great game. He had almost 500 total yards himself, right? That being said, he missed a couple of kind of wide open guys. One of them was a drop, but then he had a guy that he missed, and he was wide open. I think that was a third or fourth down play. And some of that kind of stuff, that definitely got the fans on him because they're not used to seeing that. And when you're used to, and when the last guy that you just saw was Caleb Williams, and he's on his way to winning a Heisman Trophy, that was tough on a lot of fans, So, and it is tough on everybody. But in the end, I mean, he did lead a top 15 offense in total offense for the season. I do think that he's a top 2 or 3 guy in the conference right now. But I also think that the conference has a lot of good quarterbacks. I'll just put it that way. You start looking at Tyler Shuck at Texas Tech. I think he's pretty good. Kansas State. They haven't wanted. What's his name? I don't know why I'm forgetting his name all of a sudden. But Will Howard. He was great. As great as Duggan was in the Big 12 championship game. What a great game that was, by the way. As great as Duggan played his heart out, he almost left it all on the field, but we'll beat him. We'll beat him. And they've been trying to get rid of that guy since he got there, it seems like. But I like Will Howard. I think he's really good as well. I think that there's some guys in the league that are just really good. And honestly, if you look at, really Malik at Texas, the backup quarterback, he might be better than Quinn. And he definitely has more weapons at his disposal. He's the kind of guy that can be electric. And I would probably play him. I'm glad that he's not playing. I'm glad that Quinn remains the starter. But I think that if Quinn was to get hurt again, that might be, a blessing for Texas, whether they want to admit it or not. And a lot of people might say the same thing about OU. I think that when you have Jackson Arnold coming in behind him, the Elite 11 winner, Gatorade Player of the Year in the high school, he was the Player of the Year in Texas, 5-star plus guy. If there was a better quarterback in the country, maybe it's Dante Moore. They're 1A. You know what I mean? That's kind of the way I looked at that. The guy's unbelievable. So I feel like you can, if you're Dylan Gabriel, you can afford to get in there and kind of let it all hang out, get your opportunity to get to the league this year, because I think Pro Football Focus has him rated as the highest rated quarterback in the Big 12. Pro Football Focus has him at number 1 at like an 80. It's one of the highest in the country, actually. Most of the grades I figured he was going to get were like lower grades because of his size and stuff like that as well. But I think that he can do good things. I do think he's a winner, man. I do. Is he perfect? No. And most quarterbacks aren't in college, by the way. But I just think that it's tough for a guy like him because you do come in behind all these Heisman winners. You had Heisman winners. You had 2 of them in a row, and then Jalen Hurts was another first-round guy, and then they got Spencer, who Spencer's got an NFL arm too. That's another guy that he's done something. When it's bad Spencer, it's bad, but it's good Spencer's pretty good. Arm-wise, he's an NFL guy. We'll find out what he can do in between his ears, but I do think that that's a tough thing to come in, but he knows that offense of Jeff Lebby's better than anybody there. So I think that he's definitely the guy. And I don't think that you want to put even a guy like Jackson Arnold, you don't want to make him be the starter as a freshman unless you just have to, right? I do feel like it's I definitely feel like it's a good thing. It's a good problem to have to put him on the bench right now. But I think that Dylan's fine. I think that they've got the best running back room in the country, in my opinion. And it's going to get better. It's definitely top 2 or 3. I know that there's some other good running back rooms, including Texas. But if you look at the depth in that running back room with the guys that they have and the guys that they're recruiting, man, there's going to be some guys that are going to be not getting playing time that could be starting pretty much anywhere else. I still feel like Marcus Majors, if he can stay healthy, he's going to contribute. But right now, it's Gavin Sawchuk and Javonte Barnes. But when you have a running back room like that, and an offense that can support that, I think that you give Dylan an opportunity to be pretty good. I like where he's at on it, and Jackson Arnold is definitely we're looking forward to him as well. And I think that if you see Dylan go down, I feel like Jackson could definitely step in and win games for you, because the offense they ran in high school pretty similar. So I think he's going to do well.
And it's certainly something they didn't have last year, because when Dylan went down, it just was a train wreck. Completely. Of course, they were even afraid to throw the ball downfield. So they were just
Braden Willis in the Red River game. Braden Willis, the tight end, and he was playing quarterback.
Yeah, it was ugly. It was bad. So Dylan Gabriel, best quarterback in the Big 12. That's a great. I don't have a set opinion on that right this second. I've rated and ranked the quarterbacks in the Big 10 and the SEC. I guess I'll have to take aim at the Big 12 next. I do think that probably the best quarterback conference in America is the Pac-12.
Okay.
But
with Caleb Williams and Dante Moore and
Michael Penix.
I like Michael
and Cam Rising and
really
Jaden DeLora and Bo Nix.
It's
pretty well loaded.
Bo Nix, yeah.
What's that?
I said Bo Nix. I was just kidding.
You didn't throw him last year, that's for sure.
45 touchdowns. He was a lot better. Yeah. He was. Until they played, except for the game against Georgia, he looked like.
Except for the game against Georgia. Nobody looked good in that game.
No, they didn't. But I tell you, I do feel like you're probably right there, though. I mean, and that's wow. And you think about DJU going out there. I think it's a good situation for him. I don't know that I necessarily blame what the offense was or what the offense they were running. If you go back and look at some of that tape, we were kind of talking about this last night, because I think that Clemson is one of those dark horse teams that could win the national championship just because of their defense. And I think that Riley is going to get something out of Klubnik that you probably weren't getting last year. And I just think that maybe DJ wasn't the perfect fit for that offense. I think he's going to be good at Oregon State, though. I do. I think that they're going to put him in a situation that he's going to be good in,
Well, Oregon State loves to run the ball more than just about anybody in America. They had a comeback win against Oregon. They were down, I believe, 17 points, and they came back without even throwing the ball. They ran the ball 19 times in a row. Like, they love to run the ball. So DJ is the perfect quarterback for them.
I'm going.
And it gets lost a bit that Clemson's wide receiver room, which was arguably the best in the country for close to 10 years, we could just rip off the guys, DeAndre Hopkins, Sammy Watkins, Martavis Bryant, Justin Ross, and it keeps going on from there. Artavis Scott and so forth. Of course, Hunter Renfrow. That those guys are gone, and they have not replaced those guys in their wide receiver room. And I watch Clemson play 5 or 6 times a year. Their wide receiver play has been poor the last couple of years. They don't have guys jumping up, high pointing the football, out fighting defenders on 50-50 ball. They don't have those dudes anymore. They've recruited them. The recruiting rankings would tell you that they should have developed them. But so DJ was bad, but not nearly as bad as the stats would show, which were awful 2 years ago, 9 touchdowns, 10 picks. But he did toss in 22 TDs and 7 picks this year. So he was markedly better. Yeah.
And I still feel like I think Bo Collins has got an opportunity to be really good. And I think that maybe this change of the offensive coordinator and scheme and everything may help. And if you think about it, it's going to be the first time that you've really seen a spread offense, or the air raid, I should say. There's a lot of spread offenses. The air raid paired up with the defense that, I mean, these guys are definitely one of the top defenses in the country at every level. They're sound, and we were talking about like Derek Carter and Wade Wood as those might be the best 2 linebackers in the country. Right. I really like that team. So again, yeah, I feel like I don't know where we got off on this, but so anyway, it's just I feel like with that you're going to have some offensive talent. I think that K Klubnik could do some good things. In the end, I feel like if you give, that's where I was headed with it. If you give Dylan Gabriel some help defensively, because they just had none. When you were 124 out of 131 in total defense, I mean, that's brutal. That is brutal, and they still were in almost every game. The 7 losses, 5 of them were by a score, and 4 of them were by 3 points. So there's that. There are a lot of people are saying, he doesn't do well in close games. Well, some of those games shouldn't have been that close, and they wouldn't have been. And I get it that there's some times that you'd like to see him do a little better in certain things, but I think that if you can get some support from the defense and everything, you're going to be good. Davis Bevel's right up there. Phil BV, you're hilarious, hilarious. But I think that General Booty would probably go in before Davis. I think that he comes in as the third, and maybe even I think that they may try to get him some time so he can go somewhere at some point. Yeah, I do feel like I think that if you can get some support, and I think that overall they need to play complementary football for them to win anyway. You know what I mean? I think that you're going to need all 3 phases, and that's something that has been sorely missing around Oklahoma for a while. So.
Yeah, there's a certain level of pressure that's put on a quarterback when he's either standing on the sideline for a 7 or 8 minute drive that his defense is giving up as they're just getting pushed down the field at 5 and 8 yards a clip, or the other offense just scored in 3 plays, 75 yards, and it took about 48 seconds, and he's got to go out there and he's got to start catching up, playing catch-up football right out of the gate. So that running game, if the defense can play complementary football, hold people down, is going to allow not just the pressure to be taken off Dylan Gabriel, but for them to rely on what you're saying is arguably the best running back room in the country. And those guys become more of a factor because you're not down 10 or 14 points in the second half trying to play catch up.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you're right. And I think that's what you need. Every quarterback kind of needs that. You know what I mean? It's great if you can, get out there and I mean, because he's not the fastest guy in the world, so you don't expect him to get out there and go. He had a 60-yard run against Nebraska last year. That's cool. But to hear the UCF fans, they think he's soft. I don't, but I do think that you just want him to be able to move the pocket around and do some things. But having that running game set up the throw is always a better thing. And particularly they run a lot of that read option stuff. If they don't ever believe that you're going to hand the ball off because you're down 14, it's not hard to kind of do that. You know what I mean? So it's not hard to kind of stop that offense or not get a lot of 3 and outs and stuff like that because they know you got to throw. It's just kind of is what it is. But I agree. Yeah, I think that they got a good thing going there. They're recruiting very well there as well. You've got Michael Hawkins coming in this class. He's a legacy kid as well. His dad played in the NFL as a defensive back. And then the Kevin Sperry, the 25, the kid that's already committed. Oh, my goodness. Oh my goodness. That kid can spin it. And he was doing things as a sophomore last year that Oklahoma fans were fawning over what Jackson Arnold was doing. And he was doing those things as a sophomore. He's going to be the real deal. It's kind of exciting. It's kind of exciting what happens, but
So Jason, your thoughts about if you were running the show and Dylan Gabriel turns in the type of season we all expect, not at the elite of college football, but he's a top 15 quarterback in the country. He's something in that range.
Yeah.
And he throws his 25 or 30 touchdowns, throws 7 or 8 picks. He just turns in the type season we're expecting. And Oklahoma's winning its share of games. It's competing for Big 12 championship. So it should be blowing a few people out, not on a regular basis, but they should be able to have some 3 touchdown leads in the fourth quarter. How much time are you giving? Are you giving any time to Jackson Arnold to try to prepare him for 24?
Oh yeah. Yeah, he needs to play. And I think that that's the plan. It seems like it should be anyway, because I think that now don't get me wrong, I think that Dylan has another year because of COVID and that other stuff. He's going to have another year left. I don't think he gets it at Oklahoma, but because I just think that Jackson's played nice. He doesn't expect to start this year or anything else, but I think that you definitely have to get him in there, and I think they want to. I think that they want to figure out who he is and what he is. Not that you have to stick him in because you're in trouble, or you got an injury or something like that. That's if with an injury you put him in and you go for it. But I think that they'd love to put him in at least situationally, give him some opportunities and stuff here and there. And yeah, third quarter, and I think somebody just put that in there in the chat a few seconds ago too, talking about it'd be nice, if he was in, because that means that they're probably winning the game pretty handily if he's in the third quarter. Hopefully it's not to try to mount a comeback. That's kind of a tough thing to put on somebody.
Hey, Jason, before we wrap it up, unless you had any other thoughts about the quarterback position, our guy Oki brings up a topic here just in regards to defensive improvement. He's been waiting for a championship level defense forever.
We all have.
I'll throw it out this way. Considering what you saw last year, which was abysmal, but the additions through the transfer portal that really beefed him up, you ran down some of the guys like Bothroyd, Spears, those guys up front.
That's
of
right.
course, McCullough coming off the edge could really be disruptive in the backfield. He was at Indiana as a freshman All-American. And then just the flat out advantage of having one of the best defensive minds in the game and having a full off season to get everybody comfortable with the relationships with the coaches, the terminology, the scheme, where it's second nature and it's not you're constantly thinking. And we know that Brent Venables gives those guys a lot to think about and a lot to digest, which is a great thing when you master the defense because you've given the offense a lot to think about and you confuse the offense. But before you get to that point, you more or less confuse yourself. What would be a reasonable, successful season on the defensive side for Oklahoma? What's going to show you that, okay, we're not expecting the best defense in the country, Georgia standard, but what would the expectations of improvement be for you?
I look at it in terms of last year. If they were in the top 70, they would have won 10 games probably. If they were in the top 70. I don't know. Venables was talking about this in a recent interview that he did. He feels like they're a top 50 for sure, and maybe even a little better than that. Reggie Pearson thinks that they're a top 10, top 5 team. I don't know that I expect that, but I do understand what he's talking about is that there's that kind of talent there at every level. Hassan McCullough is a game record type of kid. I mean, you saw it as a freshman season, and he's gotten beefed up even more since getting in the weight room with Schmitty. Sheesh, and that's the other part of it too, is these guys were not strong like that last year either. So while they're definitely have understood that they're understanding, and this is a tough scheme. It's particularly when you're coming from a scheme that was read and react, and it was everybody go to the football. There's just not a lot to it. And this one, you have to be very disciplined in your assignment. And if you don't, it can look really bad. So myself, I'm trying not to get too crazy. But I believe with this schedule, that in the way that it looks, I feel like that they should, if they're in the top 50 or so, then you're probably going to win 10 games. I feel like they win 10 games with that schedule. They don't have to play Texas Tech. That was a loss last year. They don't have to play Kansas State. That's been a loss 3 of the last 4 years. They seem to have OU's number. If they play them, it would be in the conference championship game. They don't have to play Baylor, who's been a loss the past 2 seasons for them. So I feel like, it sets up pretty well for you. Oklahoma State lost a lot of guys. I know Cody wants to tell everybody that they're better. They're not. They're gonna that one should be a win. I think that I could see them losing games. I've said this a lot, that I feel like if you look at this schedule, you can see maybe 4 teams that might trip them up, right? I could definitely see them losing. If you get in a shootout kind of game with Jalen Daniels at Kansas, you could lose the game. Now, they generally don't have a problem with Kansas. It's Kansas State. But I could see that one being a trip-up game. I thought I could see UCF at one point, but I think that UCF's painted a big target on their back, and they're going to get killed when they get there because of it. I really do, and I think it's just going to get louder before that. So I tend to doubt that one. I think the BYU game is a tough one. When you got to go, and of course Texas, yeah. Texas, it's the Red River game, and they should be the best team in the conference. They should be. But then the BYU game, it's going to be a night game. It's towards the end of the season. I think that if they're in contention to get into that conference championship as we expect, you could see them winning it, but you could also see them losing it, because I don't know. You know what I mean? That's just a hard place to go and play at altitude, and it's cold, and it's going to be rowdy in there. And they don't lose a lot of games there. They just don't lose a lot of games there. I remember the last time I've been to that stadium, I watched Texas get smoked, smoked. But it was fun. That was fun.
They beat Baylor 2 seasons ago there.
They did.
Or last season.
Last season, yeah.
They beat them in overtime.
Yeah, and then they beat Baylor the year before. No, Baylor beat them the year before, didn't they? In Waco.
Waco,
but it was a good game too.
Yep. Oh yeah.
But I feel like they're probably. I don't know that they're the same team that they were the last couple of years. And you're not too sure about this quarterback, the transfer from Pitt. I don't know. I still feel like that's one of those games that you could see them getting tripped up. But I don't see them losing all of those games. You know what I mean? Like I said, I could see them lose. I could see 3 or 4 teams that might be TCU, as that's going to be the last one of the season. I could see that one maybe, but that's in Norman also. And then they kind of owe them one. So there's 4 teams that maybe could trip them up. Do they lose all 4 of those? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that maybe they split them and they win 10. Because other than that, I mean, if they lose to, you don't expect another loss with West Virginia, unless it just comes apart. But this is not what you see from Venables' defenses. They generally do struggle in the first season, and then they get better in the second, and then by the third year they're really good. I think with the transfer portal being what it is, you could maybe see it accelerating a little bit. You got to worry about them gelling, but I don't think that that's the problem here. It doesn't sound like it is. And I know he's excited about it. He said that what BV said in that interview was that if they're in the top 50, they're going to have hardware. They're going to have some hardware at the end of the season. I don't know what hardware he meant necessarily, but I'm guessing he was saying Big 12. I don't think he was predicting national champions, but.
So, folks, understand this. I know the defense was bad. There's no getting around that. But 124th in the country overall, yards per game. Understand number 82, yards per play.
Yeah.
So I tend to go yards per play. That means when the offense was good, the offense was scoring, and they had to get back out onto the field and play a lot of defense. And that's also meaning that in the games like the Texas game, the TCU game, when the offense unraveled and Dillon's not out there and they're going 3 and out, that they're on the field constantly. So the yards per play, still not a good number at number 82 in the country, but still that's better than 50 teams in the country, and it's 40 spots better. What's that?
It was better than USC.
Way better than USC, and 40 spots better than they were yards per game. So I'm a yards per play guy first and foremost, but part of that was their problem, not getting off the field and giving up just enough to stay on the field and give up first down. So the yards per play can work against you in that way as well.
I agree. It's kind of chicken and egg when it comes to that kind of stuff, right? You don't know what, because a lot of people will say, hey, well, get off the field, stop somebody, and then you'll get to rest. And then it's, other people are like, you need to run the ball more. That's what I always try to tell people, that when you're in a hurry up type of offense and this is what you do is go fast, you don't slow down. That's when you do that, I think that's what happened against Bedlam. I'm pretty sure that was the Venables thing that he wanted. They got out there and scored 28 points, and he's like, all right, run the football. Screw that. Do what you're doing, blow them out now. And then they got out of rhythm, and they didn't look good the rest of the way. And I just feel like I think that's kind of one of those things of, working through that learning curve of being a head coach and trying to maybe stick your hands into a few more things than you probably should have. I think Levy doesn't need help running that offense. I don't. Just like I wouldn't expect anybody to Dabble's not telling BV what to do, on the defensive side whenever he was at Clemson. So, I just feel like that was one of those learning curve things. But I do think that, yeah, it's kind of chicken and egg. You either, get off the field. You know what I mean? Stop somebody and you can come rest, or, offense, run the ball a little bit. If you're scoring fast, it's one thing. But if it's if you're 3 and out, then obviously you start saying, hey, run the ball a little more.
Folks, we appreciate Jason. You can join him on College Football Hall of Fame podcast all the time. Get on over there. It's right here on YouTube. You can search it right now, College Football Hall of Fame podcast. We've got a live stream coming up here at 3 o'clock. So just in 90 minutes with all the San Diego State business going on. We produced a video late last night. Check that out. It's on the main channel. And then we're going to go live at 3 o'clock Eastern time. We got a lot of insightful people that are semi-close to the situation to give us a little bit more insight on what's going on there between San Diego State, the Mountain West,
what
and
is that? That's
Pac-12
crazy, right?
moving. It's crazy. It basically tells me that San Diego State didn't have its ducks in order, and they were not communicating amongst themselves to know that they were on the same page with this. And number two, that they got caught up at some point believing that they were in the Pac-12, and then they had to all of a sudden backpedal. There was a series of letters that were released by the San Diego Tribune yesterday that outlined these 6 letters, and you can see at some point, we're resigning, hate to leave the conference, we wish you all the best, we're out the door, we're notifying you of our resignation. Then all of a sudden, oh, well, we were just sending out a feeler and just talking about that it's a possibility. And no, you resigned. And when they took your president off the board of the conference,
what is going on?
That was the obvious sign that we got your resignation, because by our bylaws, we have to take off your president off the board of the conference board. And we did that. So that showed you that we accepted your resignation. You're gone. Bye. And then they're backpedaling going, well, we
on
were
the
just
West Coast right now. What in the hell is going on with all these folks? They're all crazy. I don't understand. The whole realignment picture is just such a mess, Mark.
Yeah.
But I've been watching kind of, and I've been busy with some other stuff. But I started seeing a bunch of stuff yesterday on Twitter and STS, and then I saw your video from yesterday, and I was like, what? It was crazy. I was trying to get ready for the show, and we didn't end up working that in, but my goodness.
Have you ever seen a situation where a school is saying, we're still in that conference, and the conference is saying, no. We cut ties. Now, that doesn't mean it's not going to come together, but that conference, the Mountain West, is going to have them by the throat to say, because San Diego State did this 10 years ago. They threatened to leave. They tried to leave. They were out the door, and then they got pulled back. And so I just expect the Mountain West is going to say, we want you back. Sure, you're one of our best football program and basketball programs. Obviously, they went to the Final Four. We want you, but you're going to have to sign some major exit fee. We're going to pin you down for 20 years or something.
Yeah. Well, and I think isn't that what's happening pretty much now, is that the Mountain West is trying to make sure that they get enough money if they're going to stay, that they're just kind of, trying to make sure that they can kind of build. And I get it. Listen, you can't just sit there and dangle. And I put a lot of that stuff on the Pac-12 too, because they don't know. Nobody knows what they got going on, because everything you're hearing is all coming from media sources, whatever, that, but Kliavkoff it's like he's been in a bunker hiding out for months now, and so you're hearing stuff from weird places, then everybody keeps telling you that a deal's close. Everything keeps coming from that Arizona president is, I'm pretty sure a deal's pretty close. It's close. It's close. And I'm thinking, what? It's so wild. It's just so wild. I just wish that, that it would get over with. But I do think that I think that a lot of it has to do with that. But then San Diego State, what are you doing? You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so apparently the Big 12 isn't offering them a spot. Otherwise, they would have done that instead of going back to the Mountain West, right?
I guess so. All right. Well, we got to run. Jason, thank you so much for making this work and making this happen for us on Wednesdays. No catch problem. Jason at College Football Hall of Fame podcast. And we will see everybody back here next Wednesday. Bring a friend or 2 or 50 for our 50, Sooner show, and get on over to Jason's work as well.
Thanks a lot for having me on the show again, Mark. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.